welcome to my channel. My name is Rochelle. I'm the mother to a 13-month-old girl, and I am growing into motherhood on this channel. We'll be exploring a variety of topics about motherhood, figuring out parts of myself, and relearning and shaping myself into a mother. So in the last video, we talked about some things that were major lessons for me in my pregnancy and that were surprising. And this is kind of a part 2. We'll be talking about my postpartum journey. And there are a lot of things that were shocking about that as well. So we'll start with the first few weeks. Some interesting things about what happens to your body. So I had carpal tunnel, and pretty sure it was in my right hand. And that was in the last few weeks of my pregnancy. I went 41 weeks. Those last few weeks, I developed carpal tunnel in my right hand. And I wasn't really sure what was happening. I thought maybe I had like a pinched nerve or something that was making my hand and wrist numb. It was like a tingling sensation. I didn't know that's what it was. I don't know what I thought it was, but I didn't think that's what it would feel like. So I mentioned it, I think, in one of my last prenatal visits. And we didn't really do anything with it. And then we went and gave birth. And then it was still pretty intense. He did work through it and talked to a doctor in the weeks that followed, but it took several weeks for the feeling to fully come back in my fingers all the way through my wrist. It's a little bit of a problem, especially with mobility and being able to like maneuver her, because I was breastfeeding, trying to learn to breastfeed. And so being able to hold her in certain positions was really hard. And so that definitely created a disability for me, if you will, with breastfeeding. But there's so much more that I could share about breastfeeding, so we'll get there. The fact that my feet grew a whole size was such a surprise to me. Like, I don't think I had heard of that. And I didn't even realize it happened. That was even more surprising. So I just continued wearing my shoes as you would in post-pregnancy, postpartum. Didn't think too much of it, but I guess if your brain is so actively focused on your baby and you're thinking about that so much, you really deprioritize your appearance and like what you're wearing and how you feel. It just becomes such a low priority. Not that it should, but it just does. So that was my experience. But it took me several months to realize like, oh, these shoes hurt my feet. I need new shoes. And so it didn't really hit. So I'm just gonna give you the funny story. About 7 months in, we took a trip to New York. It was our first trip post-baby. She came with us. We're walking around New York City. It was my first time in New York. We're walking around. We had done a fair amount of walking that day. Nothing like insane, but it was, it's New York City. We walked. So we're walking back to the hotel at the end of the day, and my feet are on fire. Like fire. Like I have to get these shoes off. The next day, my feet are in not great condition, and I'm about to put these same shoes on. Yeah, it was not happening. So we put the shoes on, and we promptly made a plan to go to the shoe store so that I could pick some new shoes. And while we were at the shoe store, my husband decided to pull out the little foot measure thingy, just out of curiosity. And I measured my foot, and I was like, whoa, wait a second. My foot grew a whole size. Duh. That's why your shoes hurt your feet, because they're too small. They're too small. And I didn't even notice. Did not occur to me. So we bought some new shoes. Unfortunately, I had to get rid of a lot of shoes as a result of that. So I mentioned in the first video of things you should prepare to invest in. And a lot of people think, oh, shoes are safe. Shoes were not safe for me. So just prepare yourself that you might be replacing your entire wardrobe because you have now gotten pregnant and then given birth. And now your body is a whole new body. So just prepare yourself. My wardrobe is still in shambles. We're still working out what my style is, and that's something we'll explore in a future video. Before I get to the breastfeeding thing, another thing that was surprising about postpartum the first few weeks was how much that baby consumes of your brain. It's a lot of work. I don't know how aware you are of that. I knew it was a lot of work. I knew. But I don't know if you know until you are feeding a child and putting a child to sleep every 2.5 to 3 hours for months on end. Yeah. So it was intense. But immediately after the baby is born, people tell you need to rest, you need to try to focus on recovery. Don't worry about, all the other things. Just focus on your recovery. Rest as much as you can. Eat well, drink water, those types of things, right? But you can't. Like your brain is like firing all day long. How is my baby doing? She's crying, and I left her with, a grandparent to take a nap, and I can't go to sleep because my brain is firing. I need to get to my child. And You know, is she going to take that nap? And if she doesn't take that nap, the rest of the afternoon and the evening is going to be set off into the wrong direction. And now we're going to be stressed out and dealing with it all night. And I don't think I can take another night of no sleep the way that we've been going. Like, it's just constantly firing, constantly firing. And so I don't think I can impress on that enough. I think I've said it enough. But it's like a biological urge where you feel innate need to be close to your baby at all times. Regardless of your body's need to rest and recover, you want to be the person to do all the things. It's really hard to navigate that. I would highly recommend making sure that your partner is very, very aware of what the postpartum first couple weeks are going to look like. You can't really prepare because you don't know until you know. Give them as much information as you possibly can and just let them know that it may be a lot harder than you think it's going to be. So just prepare for the worst and be happily surprised if it's not that bad. So yeah, breastfeeding. I've alluded to it, and I'm just going to say it now. It is the hardest thing that I have ever done in my life. And I've done a lot of hard things. I'm fairly gritty. Breastfeeding whooped me, wrecked me emotionally, physically, and on a biological need level. Like, I needed to feed my baby. And it was really, really hard. I think what was most challenging for me in that, and two things. So first thing that was really challenging for me about that was that I had really wanted to have a natural birth, and that was not realized. We talked about that earlier. It ended up being a C-section, which it needed to be, but I had hung a lot of hope, maybe a little bit more than I should have, on having a natural birth and being able to experience that, something that I've always wanted to experience. And I don't know if we'll do this again, so I may not get that chance, but the fact that I did not get that chance, it was that much more important to me that breastfeeding was successful for me, because it was the other thing that I really wanted to do. So there was just a lot that I didn't know going into it, of the ways in which things could go wrong. What I found information-wise going into birth about breastfeeding made it sound oversimplified. They just said, this is how you latch a baby. They show you what is a correct latch, positions that people like to use or prefer to use for breastfeeding, how to latch a baby in those positions. And then they offered lactation consultant services, essentially, was the extent of it. And I tried to do a little research, you know. I think I should have done more research. I don't know if the information is out there, but let me just prepare you that there are so many things that could go wrong with breastfeeding that make it challenging for both you or your baby. For starters, your nipples, the shape and size of your breasts, the baby's anatomy of their mouth, if they have some sort of tongue tie or anything else going on in their mouth that makes it hard for them to successfully latch on and suckle. And then there's position. So position is actually a lot more crucial than I was aware of. It was not something that was very well communicated to me in the initial day, with that first session in the hospital where a lactation person comes and shows you how to do it. And that would have been so much more helpful for me. So we had some challenges because of position initially. And so because my baby felt like she was falling, she felt like she was going to slide, or I guess the moral reflex kicked in. And part of that makes you clamp down on your jaw. And so no, of course she didn't have teeth, but she was biting down on my nipple with her gums. And they're hard, like they're not soft, squishy. But some other things that I was unaware of, or semi-aware of, but they tell you is not correct. So they tell you in these videos, when you're researching breastfeeding, that it should not hurt. If it hurts, the latch is wrong. Okay. I've also heard a number of moms who did successfully breastfeed, and they just say, you know, it just hurts in the first few days. It's uncomfortable, you power through it, and then your nipples desensitize to it, and it doesn't hurt anymore. And so I'm gonna lean on that side of things. I think that's more true. I think that it's just hard in the first few days. It just hurts a little bit. It's just the truth of it. I think secondly, I also had really sensitive nipples, and then I also had a yeast overgrowth, which can impact the sensitivity in your nipples and the pain that you're feeling. And so I was feeling an intense amount of pain and discomfort, making it really hard to navigate positioning and correcting her latch because I'm wincing and having a hard time managing that and managing her. Yeah, it's really hard remembering some of the stuff. But then to make it worse, days into it, so I want to say she was maybe 3-4 days old, after feeding her 2.5 hours every day throughout the night, every 2.5 hours throughout the night, throughout the day, 24 hours, 7, you know, if you're trying to feed your baby that often, your nipples get destroyed that quickly. And these are long feedings as well. So initially, your baby's not as efficient as getting the milk out, and it's thicker. So that's part of it. Eventually, it doesn't take as long in the months to come. We were talking about me breastfeeding for 45 minutes at a time, 8 times a day, through excruciating pain, and a baby biting on my nipple who's crying because she's hungry and I'm in pain. And no one tells you just how hard that is. It's so hard. There were nights where we were both sobbing. And so we did have to combo feed. We supplemented with some formula in the first few days. One, because I needed to give my nipples a break to heal because they were destroyed. They were raw and skin was missing. I'm sorry that's graphic, but that is the reality of what was going on. I needed to let them heal. Under some consultation from a lactation consultant, she gave me some tips on what to do. I pumped for the feeds that she got a bottle with formula and maintained my supply. It just took a really long time for us to get into a rhythm. So the other thing that I would say is that it's really important for you to go into it with the mindset that you and your baby are learning a dance. You're learning how the rhythm works to put the baby on your nipple and latch them. Make sure that their body is level and all of the things. And the baby is also learning to work with you because they're going to be doing their own thing, you know. So it's a dance to an extent. But you're learning to dance with someone who is new to life. Like they don't know anything. They're just imagine like a fish just kind of flapping, and that's kind of what it felt like, trying to get her to like cooperate so that I can get you latched. So it's like it was quite the experience. I will say though, I was stubborn and I didn't want to give up, and around 6 weeks is when we really got the rhythm. I was feeling good about it, but it was a slow on ramp of getting the rhythm where every feed was then breastfeeding moving forward. Now, I will add to that breastfeeding is also quite costly, or can be quite costly. If you're a person who breastfed without issue right from the beginning, fantastic. I love that for you and your baby. That's amazing. But if you're a person who has incredibly sensitive nipples, prepare yourself to buy nipple shields and be trying to get the right fitting for your pumps and needing to buy different parts to make them fit. Yeah, the whole breastfeeding journey, there's so many parts, pieces, accessories, components that will help you to make it work as well as make it convenient, because it is an inconvenience. So you are going to try and make it as convenient as possible, because it's just a disruption to your life if you have to stop every 3 hours to pump milk, which can take about 30 minutes for some people, which was me. I would pump for longer sometimes, but yeah, I was pumping about 30 minutes consistently. So, but I will leave it at that it was the most shocking experience of my life. Traumatizing to some extent, very difficult. I thought, honestly, and maybe this was a little naive, but I thought that doctors and nurses would prepare you a little bit more for what your baby needs in the first few weeks. They prepare you for like the first week, maybe, and then you're kind of on your own. Now, that makes sense, right? But you're not prepared. You don't necessarily have it figured out yet, so you probably will need to have a lactation consultant that you're making contact with consistently after that. So cool, got that part. How often to feed your baby, got that part. And then there's just a lot of unknown. Yeah, I guess I thought there was gonna be a lot more hand-holding and guidance and structure. There were things that we found out at the subsequent doctor's appointments. We had a few appointments in the first 6 to 8 weeks because she had a vomiting spell. We figured out that she has a sensitivity to dairy. We went to the emergency room and had some extra doctor's appointments related to that. But yeah, she would have normally have just had 3-day visit. So 3 days, or no, I think it's 5 days after birth. And then we had 2 weeks and then 6 weeks. But then we had one more appointment between that and the 6 week. Would have preferred someone to say like, hey, you really need to be tracking this. And I mean, literally you need to start tracking poops, color, shape, track sleep, track your feedings, and you need to be feeding your child from the start of one feed to the start of the next feed should be anywhere between 2.5 to 3 hours, not from the finish of one feed to the start of the next feed. That was something we learned and found that we were underfeeding our child, that we are feeding your baby on demand if they are breastfed. Yeah, we struggled in those first few days until we really got the hang of that piece of it. But yeah, we were Googling constantly what to expect from napping to eating. And because they change so much from week to week, and then it starts to spread out a little bit more when they change. Yeah, there's just a lot of things that you're trying to figure, is this normal? Is this what babies at this time do? Is this a behavior that I should be concerned about? Just constantly Googling because there's so much unknown. And I could be at the doctor's office all the time if I wanted to, but I'm just not that person. So yeah, it would have been nice to have some professional guidance that felt like you had real support into parenthood, as opposed to you were in this on your own, figure it out. It felt a little bit like that. Going back to right before birth, I really did expect to have the experience of contractions. I do recall getting to the hospital when we were being induced, and putting the monitor on you, or the contractions and the baby's heart monitor. That's what it is. And the nurse who was hooking me up and monitoring the thing would say, "Oh, that looks like a pretty intense contraction. Do you feel that?" And I'm like, I mean, it feels really tight. My stomach would get real tight, but it never got to pain. It got to discomfort, but not pain. Thought at least I would have the experience of contractions, but I did not. I did not really have that experience, though it maybe was showing on the monitor, but I just wasn't experiencing it in a physical sense that made sense to me as this is what contractions feels like. Some other things that would be useful to mention. I thought we would sleep a little more than we did. And along with that is just a matter of who our child is and her temperament. We just have a child who has a hard time sleeping. She still very much wants to be rocked to sleep. She has a very intense protest cry, and I don't believe in sleep training. That feels traumatic for both mom and baby, and so I've chosen not to do that. I've had some days where I've been I'm at my wit's end. I need to just let you cry for a little while, but it's not been something we've done consistently over a period of time to try and get her to go to sleep on her own. So she struggles with sleep, and she always has. It's gotten progressively better, but because she struggles with sleep so much, and feeding was such a struggle in the early stages, which probably went hand in hand. She might not have been as full as she needed to be, and so she had a hard time going to sleep. And so I was just a complete and total zombie, and my husband was doing his best, but he also was as well, and he was getting more sleep than I was. But yeah, your child's temperament might be a complete and total surprise to you. You might be two people. My husband and I value sleep, and we love our sleep so much, and our child cannot sleep. And so you get up 2.5, 3 hours throughout the night, and then you have to get her back to sleep, and she struggles to get back to sleep. And so you might get 45 minutes to sleep between the feedings. It's kind of how it broke down. And so I was getting 30 to 45 minute stints of sleep in chunks throughout the night, and then getting up and being with her all day long and trying to get feeding going. And I might also add that breastfeeding is so much more challenging when you don't have the sleep that you need. Your brain is just not working. You just can't figure out what's going wrong and how to make it better. This is really helpful for me to talk through and to share. I am that person. I've always liked people to share their information with me so that I know what to expect, and so that I can make an informed decision about what works best for me. And with all of that, I don't say this to scare anybody off from breastfeeding. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever done. She is successfully weaned. We started that process. We did it very slowly at 10 months, progressively reduced one feed of breastfeeding and replaced it with a bottle. And we were done 2 weeks before her first birthday. She's now 13 months as of today. And yeah, she's doing well. Yeah, I think breastfeeding is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But I also want people to know what they're saying yes to when they're saying, I want to breastfeed. You need to know what you're saying yes to and what could potentially be your reality if you decide to go that route. You might have a wonderful, easy, smooth experience, and I hope that, and I pray that for all of you. But if you don't, I would prefer you to have the information and just know that it can get better, and that there are resources and support. And if you're stubborn enough and just boneheaded enough like me, you can white knuckle yourself into breastfeeding and you can make it happen, even if maybe you should give it up. But yeah, that was our journey. It was kind of hard to talk about. I feel like the other moms that I have in my support network didn't necessarily have the challenges that I had, and so it definitely felt like I was a little bit alone. I'm glad and grateful that I had a lactation consultant who was so supportive and so available at any hour of the day who would help. But if I did not have her, I promise you I would have quit, and that would have been the best decision for my family. And so I say that to say, make the best decision for you and your baby and your family. And I pray blessings to each of you. If this was a helpful or informative video, if you would like to see more of it, I ask that you would please like this video and comment. Leave any questions you have if you're expecting or trying or thinking about trying. And then, yeah, if you are also interested in future videos that I have related to motherhood and growing into motherhood, would appreciate a subscribe. So I will see you all in the next video.